Welcome back to Hardball. For a supposed frontrunner, Mitt Romney still having trouble gaining traction with actual Republican voters. In poll after poll, his support has stayed virtually unchanged as other candidates have battled to fill the anti-Romney, if you will, position. Last month, it was Rick Perry in that position. Now it appears to be Herman Cain challenging him. This despite the fact that he's been strong in debates, Romney has, and has racked up a number of impressive endorsements. But what's wrong with Mitt Romney? Will his numbers begin to move now? And here's what we can tell from what the results of the newest NBC News Wall Street Journal poll tells us, and that's just out today. Compare how Republican voters view Mitt Romney to Herman Cain. Well, 16% of voters are very positive towards Governor Romney. That's Republicans. 16%, 1 in 6 are very positive, while 28% are very positive toward Cain. Romney also has stronger negative numbers, though it's also true that more people certainly know who he is, having run for so many more years, and Cain's a newcomer. For more on all this, we're joined by Nicole Wallace. There she is, a former senior McCain-Palin advisor and the author of a book, It's Classified. There it is. And Jennifer Donahue is a fellow at the Eisenhower Institute at Gettysburg College. I've been talking to you, Jennifer, so I want to start with you about this recently. And I get this sense that there's two fights going on in the Republican Party. Romney's won one of those fights, the sort of the more establishment Republican wing, the more eastern wing historically, and that's always been one of the wings of the Republican Party. It used to be, and it probably still is, the dominant wing. The western and southern wing, which is basically Tea Partiers, conservatives, very anti-government people, they don't have a candidate yet, and it is not Romney. Your thoughts? That's my thought. What's yours?
I agree with your thoughts. I think one of the reasons that people aren't really talking about that much in a non-sensational way is the fact that Romney's a Mormon. I think in Iowa, for example, where 44% of GOP primary voters are evangelical, 42% say they know people, the people they know would not vote for Romney. That's like saying, I won't vote for Romney.
I know it does.
That is a huge obstacle for Romney. That means that the evangelical vote, as it moves from Iowa, maybe not so much in New Hampshire, but then as it hits in South Carolina and the southern states, if he's got almost half of Republican primary voters questioning whether his religion is a cult, he's got a huge problem on his hands.
Well, let me go to Nicole on that. Your thoughts? I didn't want to start on that. I want to start on what seems to be this tissue rejection of Romney by the Tea Party conservative wing of the Republican Party. But address that question raised by Jennifer. Will his LDS religion end up forcing the Republicans to look to another candidate between now and next year?
I don't think so. And I think, Chris, you know that every candidate in both parties always has to bring some burden with them on the campaign trail. For John McCain, who was the last candidate I worked for, it was his position on immigration. He had once supported comprehensive immigration reform with the late Ted Kennedy. So George W. Bush brought some positions that were suspect to the Republican base when he ran in the primary in 2000, things he'd done in Texas with the late Lieutenant Governor Bullock. So every nominee brings a burden of some positions and obstacles. And I don't think your analysis of what's been going on the Republican side is entirely unfair, but I do think we're seeing a transition. I think as we speak together tonight, I think that I think people may be settling in with Romney. I think they may be getting more comfortable with the idea that this lusting after all these other guys who have shown no interest in running for president has been detrimental, has been a waste of time, and has been a disservice to the guys who were on the field. Whatever you think of our 8 nominees, the business of running for president is excruciating. And I think it has been a disservice to the 8 candidates who were on the field for our party to have been, I've called it dysfunctional dating, but it's that age-old phenomenon of wanting what you can't have. So I'm happy for the party that period seems to be over.
Okay, well, then the question still applies, and I want to go back to Jennifer on this. Apart from his let's talk about his LDS religion for one more back and forth here. If it is, well, certainly it's more than a position he holds. It's who he is religiously. And the question is if they're happy, 2/3 or 3/4 of evangelicals with the notion that he's a cultist, will they ever put a cultist in the White House? Will they have a hand in it? Even come November when the choice is Obama. Now, my question to you, Jennifer, it's a tough one. If they have to choose between a cultist and Obama, who are they going to put in the White House?
I think that if people believe he's a cultist, they're going to have a lot of trouble turning out for him. What we saw in 96 with Dole, what we saw in 2008 with McCain, is centrist candidates who couldn't produce a turnout, who couldn't win. And they weren't Mormons. They weren't at first. So you have to ask yourself, in the middle of a huge recession, in the middle of a time where people are very critical of government, are they going to take the step of electing another first right now in 2012? And is the turnout going to be there for a centrist and a centrist who is Mormon? And I don't think we should be afraid to talk about this subject. If Romney or another candidate were Jewish, we would certainly be talking about whether this country were ready for the first Jewish president. I don't think this is off limits. But I do think it goes much beyond Romney's religion. He's flip-flopped on issues that evangelicals care about. He's flip-flopped on the life issue. That really resonates. There are still a lot of single-issue voters out there. He's flip-flopped on the issue of gay marriage. And I don't think that people have gotten past the flip-flopping. I don't think Nicole is right that people have accepted Romney and settled in. 3 months out from the elections that begin, I think people will go back to Perry. They may go back to Bachmann. They may go back to Ron Paul. They're going to look for a nominee that represents their ideology.
Let me ask you, Nicole, about this race. There's two ways it can end right now. It can end slowly over months and months and months of back and forth with Perry coming back, or Romney can decide to shoot the moon in cards terms and go to Iowa and say, I can beat Herman Cain, who's now the front runner. I can beat that guy in Iowa. What would you recommend? He'd go for the kill, knock off Herman Cain, and win the whole thing early on. What would you recommend?
Well, I think
you sound like you're optimistic about Romney winning this thing, so I'm asking you the big question. Can he win it early?
Look, I am optimistic, and I guess I just think more of the country than both of you. I don't think that the country only looks at someone's religion. I think they can...
Well, I'm not taking a position on this. Don't put me in that box.
So I don't think that's the impediment that that we seem to be making.
Well, we're talking about the polling numbers. The polling numbers keep coming up that say that he's a cultist, that these people in the conservative Christian world don't see him as a Christian. Isn't that a problem, or isn't it? If they don't think he's a Christian, do you think they'll vote for him, Nicole?
I think that
if they don't think he's a Christian, will they vote for him?
I think that Republicans, Tea Party members, and independents are united in wanting to see President Obama and his economic policies, which have been so detrimental for the middle class and for the vast majority of this country, voted out of office. So I think that there will be bigger themes and bigger ideas that unite the country around a candidate like Mitt Romney. But if you look at 2003, this point in the Democratic primary, we were looking at Howard Dean as a likely Democratic nominee, and we were talking about Wesley Clark. So all three of us may be talking about the entirely wrong cast of characters. So I'm not ready to count anybody out.
Let me ask you one last question. I need to fill you. I need to check in with you. Well, I haven't talked to you in a while, Nicole. Do you think Herman Cain would be a great president? Yes or no?
I think he would be a great nominee for our party, and I think it would be a great contest. But how do you ever know? No one can predict what kind of the job is so extraordinary, and it's why I write novels about the presidency. It's so extraordinary. You can't ever predict what kind of president anyone will be until they're in that office. You know that.
Well, that's a wise assessment, actually. Thank you, Nicole Wallace. I think all the better of you, sir. I mean, madam. Thank you. Anyway, Jennifer, you're strong tonight, very strong. You don't like Romney tonight.